This place is very tailored to you, and you will gravitate towards the things that are calling you in a direction of your mission based on just preferences that you have. We can see how already your interpretation and experience of this reality, even amongst the myriad of options, is going to be radically different than anyone else. Not because it's different because you have the same things to choose, but what you're attracted to, your experience of those things, why you saw that versus this. These kind of things are fascinating. They seem to play out in very radically different scenarios based on the individual as well. Some people say they had a fantastic time. These people, they heal everyone. They let me drive the craft around. They picked up a bunch of people from a volcano before it exploded and saved all these people. They're here to help us. They tell us that we should be taking better care of the planet. And who knows if the entities themselves were having a rough day? Who knows if the person's interpretation of the experience is radically different than what actually happened? But for whatever reason, had a really bad time with it. And they get traumatized. There is a difference between contact and abduction. And they are viewed that way by the participant, by the occupant. And again, that's subjective in nature. You can either say that you're being taken on a wonderful ride or that they stole you and that you didn't want to go willingly. Who's to say who's controlling that? Because some people in the community will say then, well, you at a level decided that this was the kind of contact that you wanted, but you had to forget when you came here, and you just need to trust that your soul made that agreement. I have some challenges with that intellectually and emotionally for me personally, but there are some people who get by just fine on that. And there are some people who have had wonderful times after being contacted. The ability of these entities to perception manage how you feel about an experience with them, I don't know how I feel about that.
The extraterrestrial alien abduction phenomena has become much more acceptable in our modern society, especially after the recent events surrounding.
Happy heresies and welcome to the desert of the real. Welcome to Aeon Bite. My name is Miguel Connor and I am still your Pompidus of Gnosis. Welcome you spiritual entrepreneurs, your modern day Tom Sawyers, your mind for rent, your mind not for rent, any god or government. Welcome you veterans of 1,000 psychic wars. And here we are. As somebody had reminded me, I used to have this little saying on Aeon Bike that says, our salvation is God's psychotherapy. That's why we're here. In a way, we're here to heal and so much more. And so much more you're going to find out on this special show. That clip was from the documentary Doors of Perception. We will be discussing that as well as another very cool documentary, Occult, Louisiana, both which I really enjoyed, and both are the kind of content we need today more than ever. And the source of this, as well as the mind behind the force, the ethos behind Forbidden Knowledge News, that is Chris Mathieu. Chris, thanks for coming back on the show. As I say, we've switched. The hunters become the hunters.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Miguel. Looking forward to it. I'm ready to go deep and get weird with you.
We will. I was recently on your podcast. We discussed the occult Elvis. And I was thinking it's kind of cool because Elvis kind of encompasses all of that, right? He's a cryptid. He's, he makes appearances in the woods and other places. He's from another planet, all the Elvis UFO. He's altered states. He's everything we're going to be discussing now. He's a shaman. So it just fits. And with us, too, we got the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing?
Well, I had a little trouble today. I was doing the dishes and I was picked up the colander, and I got stuck trying to count the holes. Yeah, I counted up to 12 and I couldn't get further than that. I don't know what happened to me. So I was almost late for the show, but here I am anyway. I think Chris might have an explanation for this.
I'm at a loss. I'm sorry, my friend.
The Rugaloo, God, kid. You hang a colander on your door so the Rugaloo doesn't come because he can't count past 12.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. That's in the documentary. You're right. I just watched that.
Guys. All right.
I should have got that one.
Yeah. It's one of those Louisiana superstitions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tough room.
It's a tough room. Hey, I think this stuff is serious. What are you saying in the in the chat vents, what's this crown thingy? Somebody wearing a
Oh,
crown?
well, some of the users have crowns, like Graham says crown and number 1, and Tim F has a crown with number 3, William Wesh crown number 2. I don't know if those are the first, second, and third people join the chat or what, but there's like a little crown thingy there.
Yeah, I haven't changed any settings on YouTube or anything, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. Nobody answered me either, so maybe they don't know.
Maybe they're all setting up their colanders on their room or their, their computers. You're out, man.
Why don't I have a crown? I want a crown.
He's going to be steaming all show. And
Oh, we definitely have to teach you about the colander and the Rougarou for sure.
Yeah.
I love the Rougarou. Yep.
Yeah, very cool documentaries. And it's always good to see everybody in the chat, Graham, APB, Shamanic Savant, and everybody else. If you have any questions, again, for Chris, please super chat them so we can separate them from the crowd. It's a holiday weekend, but we already got a good audience today, especially, and not surprising, with the guests and the topics. And we'll get to you. Not much housekeeping. As always, please support Aeon Byte in any way you can. And definitely support Chris's work. Us independent weirdos are doing the best we can. I'm sure Chris has heard from the high ups that the day of the independent creator on YouTube and other channels is ending as these companies get more and more corporate. So we will, of course, be moving to more and more niche places. But please support so we can going, because we know these corporations are going to squeeze us, and they're cutting our, ad spend and all that stuff. So, but we will persevere. We keep doing what we're doing. So, such is the world of the demiurge. So awesome, Chris. Well, why don't we get started with you? Tell, for the audience who doesn't know about your work or what you do, how did you become a heretic and start these heresies?
Oh, well, thank you very much again for having me. This all started for me as just a very powerful curiosity. In around 2012, I was just finishing up with a really bad divorce, not in a good place in my life, working a corporate job that I really hated, and I was kind of lost. And growing up as a kid, I'd always been interested in the paranormal, the occult, mysteries, UFOs, all the stuff that I talk about now. And that interest just kind of started to burn inside of me and resurface. So I started researching and reading and getting into that again. And it filled this kind of void that was in my life at the time. But I was learning so much. I was in a small town in South Louisiana in 2012, and I seemed to be the only person in the whole state looking at this stuff and talking about this stuff. So it was a pretty lonely area to be in. So I started a Facebook blog and named it Forbidden Knowledge News, and it kind of picked up. It became a little popular because apparently there were some other people out in the world that were interested in this stuff. And the more I got into it, I just figured, I need to start talking to other people about this, bringing other people into the picture, because I know so very little. I'm just curious about it. So I was basically wanted to start a YouTube talk show. That's what I did. It started on YouTube. I was having these wonderful guests on that I was blessed that they agreed to come on my little show and start having conversations like I do now. And thank you, Charlie Robinson. I had him on one day and he suggested that I turn it into a podcast. A few months later, I hook up with a producer that he recommended and turn the YouTube channel into a podcast. This was about 2015, 2016. Fast forward to 2020, the show is still kind of a fun hobby. I'm still working a corporate job. I want to transfer this to something. I want to make it into a career. Basically, I just don't know how. Right. I'm definitely not, I wasn't making enough at the time just off of YouTube and the little following that I had to be able to support myself. And 2020 comes around and I was in another pretty dark space, going through another divorce, the troubles at my job resurfacing, and just the desire to do the whole Forbidden Knowledge News talk show thing as a career, but not really knowing how. Very frustrating. And at the time, I was talking to a lot of people about meditation. So 2020 comes around. We first start to hear about the whole COVID fiasco, and I start meditating during this time.
Mhm.
To kind of shorten up a long story, I had a very profound meditative experience where I made contact with what I currently understand as my higher self. I was having a conversation with this intelligence for a couple of hours, and it kicked my ass and told me all these things that I needed to do to improve my life, to heal childhood trauma, to move forward, and to definitely quit my job as soon as possible and start this career. And it was the most amazing, incredible experience of my life. I thought I was speaking with an extraterrestrial. It took me a while and many other future experiences like that to kind of figure out what was going on. But 2 or 3 months later, I quit my job, take out my 401k, move to Colorado, and start Forbidden Knowledge News as a career on a wing and a prayer. And
Wow.
terrifying for a year, wasn't doing anything. And one day, magically, we look at it and we can pay rent with the revenue. And it's like, things just kept getting better from there. So my whole journey, really, I owe it to listening to a spiritual voice that came through.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, as the saying goes, and I had an experience like that in 2020, is jump first and then worry about the parachute. The
Yeah.
universe will take care of you if you do it, or it will show you the right doors to go through. And when you were meditating, was this a surprise? Meditation is just part of your
It was interesting.
just part of your regular wellness modality, and it
It
just
was
hit you out of
not. I
nowhere?
was
Oh,
horrible at I had just started, and I could never get to a state of stillness. My mind was always racing until this one evening. It was very strange. I think I saw a UFO earlier that evening as well, or something I
mhm.
couldn't explain, like 3 bright orange flames in the sky that manifested and disappeared. But it was a few hours before I started this meditation, and something intuitively told me to put on some 432 hertz tones and maybe run a bath, get into some water, and that
Right.
did it for me. I was immediately in this kind of blissful state of peace, and this voice, this intelligence just started speaking to me. It wasn't me. I know what it's like when I speak to myself. It's
Right.
very powerful, and it kind of broke through, and it presented itself as this bright blue light kind of manifesting in my subconscious vision. And it was this pulsing light was there during the whole conversation, which lasted about 2 or so hours, and it
Wow.
just eventually faded to where I couldn't really understand what the transmission was coming through anymore. And that just followed me calling up people like, I don't know what happened. I might have had a LSD flashback. I might have been abducted by aliens.
Brown
I'm
acid
not
kicked in.
sure. Maybe we could figure this out. I did another experience a few days later. Nothing happened. Kept trying until I had the big experience, which brought me to a vision where I was on a craft speaking with these robed
Very cool.
intelligences that appeared as human hybrid animals. This experience was extremely profound. I was meditating in my tub, and the blue light kind of engulfed me and sent me into these visions of first this childhood traumatic event that I had forgotten about. And then it spun me into basically outer space where I was on this strange craft with these etheric beings in robes, and they were just beaming these amazing feelings of love and asking if I was ready to accept, I believe, my spiritual mission or my spiritual path, something I agreed to do here. Such a profound experience. And of course, I was agreeing in the vision, and they were also giving me instructions on how to proceed with healing childhood trauma, which oddly enough included taking psilocybin. These aliens are telling me to take psilocybin, which I hadn't done since I was a teenager. The last time I did it was a horrific experience, and it was nothing I'd ever consider going back to. But since the aliens are telling me to do it, and it was such a profound experience, when I moved to Colorado, started growing them, and continued the explorations that way.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's awesome. Yeah, and I tell people you meditate to meditate. You don't just like when you do ayahuasca, or you don't have expectations. You're
Yeah.
opening yourself, when the universe is ready to give you your marching orders, it will. So, yeah, I never worry about whether my mind's chattering, or I do my best, but I do it because it's necessary to listen, because the universe is always speaking, the others, the visitors, whatever you want to call them. And we have to learn as humans to get all that programming and noise, monkey shit out of our brain so we can allow it to come. And the blue light's amazing because, as I write in the Elvis book, the blue light was what guided him his entire life. When he was born, the light over his house, when he meditated, when it was always a blue light, and he was taught that's the light, you use it. And we were talking about mutual guests, our friend James True. He talks about blue, how important it is in the mystical side, a color that we only discovered 2,000 years ago. Right. And so forth. Then you've got Jason Reza Drajani in his book, Closer Encounters. He talks about how the blue light is almost there, 80% of all extraterrestrial encounters. So, yeah, you are a case study of doing it right. I don't know if it's doing it right, because you might end up at the stake or in some hospital. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
You're the enemy of the status quo now.
Well, it was pretty surreal how it all unfolded. After I was able to facilitate myself with magic mushrooms, I kind of taught myself ceremonies, in a sense, in order to first heal childhood trauma. That was the first big goal on my list that was communicated to me that I would have to do. And I didn't even realize I had as much childhood trauma as I did. And another thing was bad relationships. And I have a pretty incredible story about that goes with a magic mushroom ceremony and a manifestation of a reptilian, if you want to hear about it. But
yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Yeah, well, so my experiences with the mushrooms, like I said, it all started out with healing childhood trauma. And once I would start to heal some of the basic stuff, then I would take very heavy doses, like 3 to 5 grams or more at times. And I do this at least once a month. And the experiences got extremely profound. And I'd go into visions and, sometimes exit my body and have these profound experiences elsewhere with entities and beings and teachers and intelligences. And the experiences started out terrifying at first. Really, there would be times where I would have to face these only describable as monsters and demonic creatures that were representations of trauma kind of presenting themselves to me. And if I didn't face them, if I didn't go head on and talk to that dragon sitting over there beckoning me, that trauma was going to sit with me. It wasn't going to go anywhere. But I discovered that when I would walk up to that dragon and sit down and like give it a hug or something, it wouldn't be a dragon anymore. It changed into some being of light or sacred geometry or something else. And the feeling or trauma associated with transmute. And that was, the beginning of my healing process. But as I healed more, it seems like the realms or wherever I was going during these experiences, because I truly believe our consciousness is slipping at least closer to the outside of our normal perception, where there may be an ecosystem of intelligences. I think you could consider it your own inner verse or the outer verse or collective conscious field, whatever it is. But I believe that we have the capability to communicate with other intelligences out there. And, we can get into whether those are deep manifestations of our own subconscious, like egregores. Who knows? I'm sure that's part of it. But the experiences became where I would enter these very, I guess you could say, more benevolent realms, where the information being taught, I wouldn't have to worry about coming across these nasty creatures or feelings, and it would only be teachers from there on. And I'd learn these profound esoteric lessons and teachings. And there was apparently a very powerful teaching that I hadn't learned yet, because during the time when I was probably getting deepest into the mushroom explorations, I was with a woman who I met through my show. She contacted me and seemed to be, cool. And she was a beautiful woman and She was, offering to help me pay for this and do this and get the company rolling in this way.
Mhm.
And she was also romantically interested with me. So we had this kind of mutually beneficial relationship where we moved in together. And I guess I was blind to some things with her. She was a quote unquote psychic healer. She did hit regressions for people, help them heal trauma, things like that. And she had never done the magic mushroom thing before. She knew I did, and she wanted to have an experience. So I said, all right, we'll have an experience together. I started out, I gave her, I don't know how many, like probably 2 or 3 grams to begin with. And nothing happened at all. I ended up giving her more. I ended up giving her up to 5 grams in 3, 4 hours, 5 hours. Nothing happened for her. And I was in it. I was deep in the experience. These definitely were very powerful psilocybin mushrooms. And she's like, all right, well, I'm obviously not feeling anything. So maybe we could just work on some therapy for you. Maybe we could heal some childhood trauma. I can walk you through to a traumatic experience you had in your childhood. Something along those lines. And as far as I remember, we did that experience and it was fine. But what happened after that is she started saying something that didn't make sense to me. And I look over at her and she said, when I found you, I started to help you. I did this and this for you. And I sense you don't really love me anymore. And I looked at her and she looked at me and she said it again. She said, I don't think you love me anymore. And when she said that, this is what happened, and I'll explain what happened, then I'll explain what I believe really happened after I came down and was able to process things. So when she said that she shapeshifted into a 6-foot-tall reptilian that was wearing my ex-girlfriend's nightgown, she had big yellow eyes, she had teeth, and she's like, you don't love me anymore? And all I could do was, all right, I'm out. I just took off. I could hear her like stomping behind me, big reptilian steps, like, you don't love me anymore? I was freaking out, man. I ran to my basement, and I swear this all was what I was
Did it
seeing.
like call for David Icke? David Icke, help me.
I was, dude. Yeah, I was like, all right, so maybe I'm the first one to OD on mushrooms and I went to hell. And this is it. I got to deal with it. I don't know. My whole basement at this point changes into this dungeon. And I look out the window and the sky is like blood red. I've got bars on the windows now. This is like my whole reality is changing in front of me. So I run back upstairs. I managed to avoid the reptilian lurking up there. And I jump in my shower, which it was a completely different looking shower. It looked all dingy and gross and it wasn't mine. I'm like, what is going on? So I turned the water on and I didn't know what to do. So I just start praying. I said, God, please help me. And as soon as I said that, I had this rumbling in my stomach and I puked up this black, oily, viscous looking stuff. And I swear the lights flickered, everything changed, boom, bam. I was back to normal. I felt normal. I felt like this powerful presence of love with me. It was pretty incredible. And this voice came over me as I was puking that stuff. It said, you're being deceived, right? And I was like, what does that mean? So I went outside. My ex-girlfriend was back to normal. She was no longer a reptilian. She's like, what was that about? I said, we're not talking about this right now. So I grabbed a bottle of wine. I downed it. I went to bed. But I figured out what it was all about in the following days and weeks, because after that experience, her personality completely shifted. She showed a very dark, might say reptilian side. She was very cruel. She was very materialistic, something that I either didn't notice before because I was wearing some kind of stupid goggles, or it kind of came out in her. But what I believe is the mushroom was showing me, this is what you're with right now, and you really need to know. And the days and weeks to follow, she embodied that reptilian type of energy that she showed in real life. And I was like, nah, this is got to end. I see what happened and cut it off, man. So the mushrooms were a powerful premonition.
What a story.
Wow.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Nothing like a lizard in a negligee to
That's
scare you
right,
off.
man.
Change your life. Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah,
That's not the way to get tail, huh?
it's not a subtle hint. No subtlety there. No nuance to this story.
Yeah. Little caveat, I no longer do the magic mushrooms, but I did have plenty of experiences after that, plenty very profound. And as I think it was McKenna said, if you get the message, hang up the phone. I got the message a while back. I hung up the phone. I
Right.
may go back to visit in the future if they call, but as for now, I think I got what I needed out of those whole experiences.
There you go. There you go. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So tell us about the documentaries. Again, I really enjoyed them. And again, these these are, I don't want to say real documentaries, because people put these documentaries all the time on the internet. It's just basically B-roll, voiceover, music, and they're fine. They're educational, they're good, better than what's on TV. But you actually, you went out, you interviewed these people. I mean, how did you decide to go from the podcast to these two documentaries?
Well, it was actually a psychedelic experience that inspired me to do so. Going back to that, and to tie in the whole Elvis thing, I did have a visitation by an Elvis archetype during a psychedelic experience that said, "I dig what you do, man," and that was about it, and kind of just flew away. But that was my Elvis experience. But yeah, I really wanted to do Doors of Perception as my first film because it encompasses all the stuff I talk about on the talk show, all the stuff I'm really interested, but it's such a big thing, the nature of reality and paranormal and ETs and how it all connects and synchronicities. How in the hell am I going to put that together? So I put that one on hold, and I did Occult, Louisiana, which I was born and raised in a small town, Houma, Louisiana, which is about 40 minutes south of New Orleans. And I didn't have any which you would probably consider classic paranormal experiences growing up, although there was some spooky energy. I've been to some spooky places, and I know a lot of people who have had paranormal experiences, including my own dad. So I was fascinated by all that, especially the history, the pirates, voodoo. And I discovered also a lot of the ancient history as I was doing research for the film. A lot of stuff that I didn't know about, which I included a bit in the film as well. So yeah, I decided, why not make a film about the high strangeness and hidden history of my home state, Louisiana. I don't really see that much done about it. You know, you have the Travel Channel little docs where they talk about voodoo and little snippets here and there. So I wanted to include some of the things you don't normally hear about. So my producer for Forbidden Knowledge News, Corey Hughes, he just wrote a book about the JFK assassination. He's writing actually multiple books about it. So he was my JFK expert. I included, which discussed a little bit about the history of the assassination as it relates to the planning that took place in New Orleans, some of the mob influence there, and a little bit about the history that most people didn't even realize was going on as it relates to the JFK assassination. And
Tommy Lee Jones character and the
Clay
the
Shaw
guy with the white hair. That's the mobster, the very flamboyant mobster in the movie.
Yeah, Clay Shaw was definitely an interesting character, as well as I can't even think of the main mob guy's name right now. Carlos Marcellus was one of the main players in the mafia that was making deals with the CIA and various three-letter organizations internationally and planning for the assassination of JFK. And I think my producer did some phenomenal research and really solved a lot of things as it relates to the mysteries of JFK. So I recommend that book. It's called A Warning from History, and he was my expert there. But we also went into a little bit of history of the voodoo, of Marie Laveau's influence in that area, some of the history of the pirates and Jean Lafitte lore that a lot of people don't really hear about. I learned about it because first in my Louisiana history class, they talked about it, but they didn't go into the extent that I had some of my experts that I had on the show go into, and just a little bit of the things that aren't normally discussed that you don't hear about in the history books, like some of the, I guess you could say, banter that was going on behind the scenes between government officials, politicians, and the pirates of the time. Um, the way they would come together and kind of work together in certain situations. And we even went a little deeper into the really ancient past of Louisiana. We had Dr. Gregory Little on to talk about the possibility of advanced civilizations, possibly precursors to what we would consider the pyramid builders that may have been a global civilization that we know of as the mound builders. And we discussed the possibilities of what these mounds really were, who these people really were, and if they were giants. There's a lot of giant bones that have been associated with the excavations of the mounds. So we went into that. And then we got into the fun paranormal stuff where we had a couple of experiencers of paranormal activity. I had my friend Scott Pace, who started out with a Bigfoot experience, telepathic Bigfoot experience, and not to mention a dog man and a Bigfoot at the same time. And his experience just evolved into UFOs and all kinds of insanity that he shares with the audience on the documentary. And just a little bit more about the paranormal history and the Rougarou, of course, which is also the dog man, which Scott Pace believed he encountered, and some of the lore behind that. So that was Occult Louisiana. It was a fun little project, and it was purely experimental. It was really just to see, that movie was to see if I could do it, to see if I could produce something and get it on a streaming platform. I learned so much from that one that we integrated into Doors of Perception, but it was really fun, and I'm happy with the way it came out.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, the history is amazing for the audience. Excuse me. I get a little God knows what's in my throat. But I love the fact that, when Andrew Jackson was fighting the British in 1810, 1812, and we're taught that that was an important battle. And like you said, Jefferson said, you have got to stop the British in New Orleans or we are screwed. It's very simple. And Andrew Jackson, 6,000 soldiers versus 20,000 British was, as some say, one of the greatest military feats in history. But then I had no idea, I even asked around, that it wasn't alone, that 1,000 pirates came to defend their land and their headquarters and fought alongside stuffy old Andrew Jackson. Only in America, right? That you'd have Jack Sparrow and all these guys showing up. Let's get the British and win the battle. So things like, and I've been to New Orleans like 5 times, and I've always been sober in recovery. So while my friends and everybody, they're out getting wasted, I'm going to see the graves and the tours and jazz, and the energy there is like nothing else. And I get tarot readings and everything, and it makes sense because Louisiana is this beautiful syncretic place where you've got like folk French Catholicism and voodoo, and you've got it's a port place, so all these traditions, you've got the native lore there, so it's like the most syncretic place in the world. And the energy there is like you said, we hear about it in Anne Rice novels and other places, but I love New Orleans. It's just the energy there is like nothing else in the world. It's just
I always say I would challenge anyone to attempt to go camping in the swamplands that are right outside in Terrebonne Parish for just one night and make it through the whole night out there. Because I've done this, and you hear and see and sense and feel the most creepiest things. You hear noises that are otherworldly that you've never heard before, and the energy in those swamps is really off the charts creepy. It's something that you'd have to really experience yourself to feel. But yeah, even in the French Quarter and a lot of areas of New Orleans, when you're just walking down, you can feel this kind of rich history, historic energy, and a little bit of darkness at times too. They have some fun stories in the French Quarter that during
I've
Mardi Gras
heard
and
them.
other.
Ugh.
What's that?
I've heard some of them. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's like,
But some, fun ghost ones during Mardi Gras. They have the stories of some of the women that'll be walking scantily clad, and they'll be groped and felt up by ghosts and otherworldly hands that aren't really there, and things of that nature. So it can be pretty fun.
for sure, for sure. Well, yeah, I'd like to, Vance. Yeah, it looks like people were talking about the new stickers on YouTube. Shall we call it the Vance Crown Affair on the chat room?
The Crown Affair.
Yeah, but I know you watched the documentaries. What did you think?
Oh, I really thought the Occult Louisiana one gave you a real flavor for New Orleans, and it was interesting. And one of the things I thought was interesting is the involvement of the pirates and privateers in the War of 1812. Nobody knows, that without those people, the war could have come out very differently.
No.
So it was educational. Production quality was really good too. And of course, the Rougaloo was my favorite with the who couldn't count past 12. I don't know why that is. Maybe that's as many grades as he went through before he turned into a werewolf.
Those are some fun legends, though. The
Yeah.
Rougarou. There's another one called the Fee-Follet, which is another local Louisiana cryptid type creature, and they have the Bigfoot. But like you were saying with the colander thing, it's fun because some of the traditions that the parents would tell children, including my parents would tell me about some of the Rougarou lords, just to basically to keep us in line or make sure we're brushing our teeth or whatever, is things like the colander. You can put one outside because they're obsessed with counting and they can't count past 13. So you put a colander out there and they're totally screwed. Or you could put the pennies out there. You can put 13 pennies and they can't get past 12 or
Right.
for whatever reason, they can't count to 13 because that's the lore. But the craziest thing is the sightings of these things are off the charts. My dad's seen one.
Wow.
My brothers claim to seen one. And, but the witness in the film, Scott Pace, claimed to psychically communicate with one that he was seeing as well. And most of the encounters you hear with the dogmen are pretty aggressive, not really benevolent encounters like the Sasquatch ones. And Scott has had both. He's had some aggressive Sasquatch and some friendly Sasquatch encounters, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I know that when he saw the dogman and the Sasquatch at the same time, is the Sasquatch is the one talking the dogman out of attacking. Hey, cool it, dogman. Just he took his dogman out for a walk, I guess, and
yeah,
all but had him on a leash.
Apparently, these things just hang out together. I don't know, having a cryptid party in the evening.
Yeah, maybe you can help me. Why is Bigfoot interesting? I mean, what has he taught us? What does he say to us? I mean, he's big and hairy and he pops in and out and he's hard to find, but I mean, does he teach us anything? Does he, he's kind of shy and not very
well, you're
friendly.
asking a person who's interviewed like 100 Bigfoot researchers. So it can be pretty interesting, some of the stories you hear about, especially when Bigfoot communicates with people. He has this telepathic link, and basically they're very harmonious most of the time. They teach us, how to be stewards of the planet, things of that nature. But they are also associated with things like being interdimensional, disappearing, being able to just step in and out of our reality. There's also been strange lights and UFOs associated with the Bigfoot phenomena. So it can be pretty interesting when you factor all those things in. There's also a couple of stories where I've heard Bigfoot can manifest objects in certain areas. This woman was having a psychic relationship with the Bigfoot, and the Bigfoot wanted her to write something down that it was saying. And she said, I don't have a notebook or paper or anything. and the Bigfoot said, walk 5 feet this way or something. And they had a notebook and a pen just waiting. And this is, according
Weird.
to a witness, no way to prove any of this stuff, but it's fascinating to hear this testimony of these people.
So they fly the flying saucers, or they have
They
their own
may,
vehicles?
Chewbacca, man.
He's looking for his medal. They're all looking for the medal they didn't
Yeah.
get in episode 4.
Could be. I don't know.
I think,
know.
yeah, and I mean, as you talk too, Chris, yeah, it's interactive, and sometimes we do close these beings with our cultural context or desire, and Bigfoot is the great manifestation of perhaps what we would like to be, in the sense that we would love to be huge and strong and simple and just live in the woods and walk around all day. You know what I mean? Something that we have lost as humans and we're not going to get back. That rawness, that connection to nature, that just, travel without any sort of goal and just chill out. That's,
Yeah, it does seem to be more of a spiritual manifestation than a flesh and blood physical being at times. We have no proof. We have no Bigfoot poop. We have very little Bigfoot hair. There's no physical evidence that we could point to right now and say this is from Bigfoot. So,
what about the giant bones? Those are the Smithsonian's hiding from us. That's good evidence, isn't it?
that is good evidence, but is it a Bigfoot or is it just a previous version of us that may have been a little bigger? That's the speculation. It's possibility that either all of humanity may have been much bigger in our ancient past, or they had classes of peoples, different societies that may have been taller or bigger, that may have been looked at as rulers or gods.
Yeah.
It's
The
possible.
Nordics come back.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a parallel evolution of human beings, like that split off from us and then grew bigger and bigger and hairier, and her feet got bigger and bigger, and
It could very well be.
and then they had developed psychic powers and other things, and
Ability to
maybe-
hide really well.
yeah, maybe the Greys and the flying saucers are trying to figure out what they are too, and that's why they might be associated with flying saucers.
Yeah,
That's
and let's be honest. If we had our way, we wouldn't shave or cut our hairs. We just
There you
walk
go.
around naked in the woods all day.
Oh,
We'd be in
man.
heaven, right?
I'd start a Bigfoot cult in a heartbeat, man.
I guess they don't get bald though. I don't think anybody's cited bald Bigfoots.
Bigfoot toupees. Are you going to start a business, man?
Hey, you
Right.
never know. They may have
Yeah.
some problems with some Bigfoots aging, who knows?
Yeah. And I think that's the crux of what you say in the second documentary, The Doors of Perception. And I agree, and I'm sure Vance agrees, is like the more answers you get, the more questions you have. And and I'm sure you feel the same way. You're doing all these podcasts, and you're like, man, this guy has a good theory. Man, this guy has a great theory. And then you're like, well, what the hell do I believe in? Should I come with a theory, a forbidden knowledge theory of everything? And you're trying to figure out, because they all make good points, they all overlap, they all contradict. And at one point, you just realize, I just got to go with the flow. We're not going to find the answers, are we?
That's it. I don't think we are. And I'm at the point where I'm pretty sure we're not supposed to reach a level of understanding. I think there's always supposed to be the next layer to discover. I don't think there's ever going to be a point where we do know it all. I do get concerned that these Silicon Valley nerd dork psychopaths are going to kill us one day with their pursuit of technology and knowledge. But I honestly think that there are some things that are just supposed to be a mystery, but I am going to explore as much as I can without putting myself or the world in danger. But it's very, I think that the more we immerse ourselves in the experience, the more the experience will communicate with us, the more synchronicities we'll have. Before I started meditating and doing the psychedelics, I didn't even know what a synchronicity was. And once I was immersed in that, I'm just like following everything, the sign here, sign there. And it tells a story. It leads me in a certain direction. And I have to think that there is something very powerful, some kind of intelligence that is really helping guide us where we're going. But to ever really know what it is, I don't know, because it seems tricksterish at times. It seems like it's always a step ahead of us. Seems like it can manifest as whatever it wants. If we are saying that aliens are the same thing as a ghost, as a Bigfoot, as a whatever, I'm kind of there. I'm not sure exactly what we're dealing with, though.
It's Elvis behind everything. He and
It
Marie
is.
Laveau are just laughing somewhere. Two immortals.
They're the archons.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head about the trickster, because I realize, if there's a trickster force, and it's Hermes, as Gary Lockman said. Hermes is the god of he's the god of travel and journeys, not destinations. The old cliche, it's the journey that matters, and that's, I think, the journey maybe doesn't end. It's the universe is just this eternal information loop, and we're just supposed to grow and enjoy the ride. Bill Hicks, just enjoy the ride, right?
Yeah. I did have a very profound experience the last time I took psychedelics, where I was confronted with the fact that I had no real belief in anything, that I had all these considerations, like what is happening in this reality. And I had this very powerful psychedelic experience that physically led me to something. And it was such a wild, it would take another 2 hours to tell the whole story. But basically, I had a waking near-death experience where I really thought I died. And I was walking through my neighborhood thinking I was walking the afterlife. And I said, I need to find God. And street lights and weird things that were following me, animals, led me to a preacher's house, which then the preacher made me realize that I wasn't dead. And he brought me home and he kind of took care of me. And the following day, I was so grateful. I didn't know he was a preacher at the time. I went to thank the guy, and he's like, well, I'm about to go give a sermon. Would you like to come with me to church? And I was like, oh, shit. I was asking for God last night. Here it is. All right, I'll go to church. And it just gave me this new understanding, not of the traditional Christian dogmatic understandings of God, but there is something greater out there. And it presented itself to me in such a powerful way, because I was having a legit life review walk. I thought I was dead. And I said, please bring me to God. And me and this man said prayers on his porch. And I thought he was an angel for a while. And he had to talk me down and be like, I'm just going to bring you home. You're all right. You're not dead. But it was the most powerful experience I had. And that was my last mushroom experience, because it took, first of all, a while for me to integrate all that and come to terms with everything and understand what it really meant. And, when I did, I was like, it all clicked. I'm like, oh, I believe in God. So it was great for me.
Oh, that's awesome. But you also suffered from sleep paralysis with demons visiting you before early when you were going through a crisis.
Yeah. It was probably right when I first was becoming interested in everything again, and coming out of a bad relationship. I wasn't sleeping at night, so I'd try to sleep a bit during the day, and I'd have severe episodes of sleep paralysis. And again, this is something, could speculate whether it's paranormal or not, but it was pretty terrifying either way. I would be stuck in between a state of being awake, but I was pretty aware, and I would see shadows walking up and down my hallway, not just one shadow person. It was like there was multiple people just walking around my house. All I could see was shadows, and they didn't feel friendly. They felt very malevolent every time they would start showing up, and the experiences would get scarier, and they would last longer, take longer for me to pop out of them. And the last couple experiences I had, I thought something was trying to break through the ceiling and attack me. And eventually I just kind of got myself into a better state. And I think it was around the time I started meditating and getting into that spiritual connection that all that other sleep paralysis stuff ended. But it was pretty interesting.
I bet. Yeah. Very interesting. Vince, do you have any questions for Mr. Chris?
Well, gosh, there's such a wide range of subjects I could ask about. I don't recall. Did you say you were ever abducted onto one of the ships? And if so, what did you see on those ships?
I was not abducted. I had the profound meditative experience where in a vision I was on a craft like thing and I was approached by extraterrestrial hybrid like beings, although they did appear more like spirits or translucent ghosts. They had these green translucent robes on. They had a frog man hybrid, a dog man hybrid, a cat hybrid, and they were basically reminding me of my mission on this earth and things like that. But it was just through a very profound meditative experience where I kind of left my body for a little bit. But other than that, like other than the psychedelics, the self-induced paranormal experiences, nothing besides very powerful synchronicities at times. But that's about it.
What do you think of all these different races, alien races and so forth? Have you come across anything that convince you of the Nordics and the tall whites and the grays and the?
I don't even know if space is real, sir.
I'm
right there. I don't know. See, I think the model we're fed has problems, but what I will say is I think that maybe it's more of a multi-dimensional nature. I think maybe these aliens, what we think are aliens, are more of egregores or spiritual entities, tricksters, things of that nature. I'm not sure that beings are coming from different planets, maybe different realms, maybe different energetic frequencies, but I'm not really convinced of the whole physical extraterrestrial phenomena. And like in my movie, Karen Wilkinson, who is an abductee, her story includes very terrifying abduction experiences, very physical experiences, but they also include military personnel. And every time I hear that there's human involvement, military, red flags go up, and the possibility that it's some sort of operation, some sort of MK Ultra clandestine operation.
Millabs,
perpetuate the UFO narrative, make it seem like something that it's not. I kind of lean towards that possibility more than the space alien thing, but I'm open, and my perspective could change tomorrow if I'm presented with new information.
How about, do you know about Colonel Corso and his revelations the day after Roswell?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Well,
he's on level.
I am not sure. I don't know about, I can't really speak to any of these classic UFO guys who really started perpetuating some of these narratives. But I just think that what we're dealing with now in our modern age, as far as the disclosure movement, what they're telling us in the media, I think that there is a high level of psychological operation. Maybe it's so that they can roll out some technology, some toys, things like that, or maybe it's to get ahead of something, some future event. But I think it's just kind of meant to lead the public, lead the consciousness in a certain direction. And I've talked to, again, hundreds of people who have had real experiences with what they think are extraterrestrials or spirits or interdimensional beings. And I try to step back and look at a bigger picture, look at all of their experiences as a whole and find the connections and the links. Well, this person who had paranormal experiences growing up, they had severe childhood trauma, and then they had very powerful paranormal experiences, and they have psychic abilities, and they have this connection to something. And then later on, they find that they have family members in the military, and they start getting abducted by extraterrestrials. A lot of these people fit certain profiles, and a lot of these people have a lot of similar things, especially the ones that claim to be taken physically by extraterrestrials. A lot of their stories kind of start out the same. They have paranormal experiences and it builds into something like a UFO experience. So again, it's multi-layered. I think that there is a layer of deception and a layer of real phenomena happening, but I couldn't tell you, again, if they're coming from different planets or not.
Yeah, clearly. I like the Malmstrom Air Force Base thing where the UFOs actually disabled missiles and so forth. That's pretty solid evidence.
Yeah.
There's, I think, so. I think at least some of these things are trying to keep us from destroying the planet. But what do you think?
Well, as far as that, it could be extremely exotic tech that we've been working on for a very long time. It could be for an adversary. It could be something spiritual that shuts down. I mean, who's to say it's not something interdimensional that has an intelligence to be able to shut down nuclear facilities? Again, we're back to the point of we have no idea what it is. How do we know they're coming from outer space? Lights in the sky were associated with shutting down a nuclear facility. There's not much we can really put together from that as an understanding of the phenomena. We can say it's really interesting and it's really powerful that they can do this, but what is it? Still don't know.
Yeah, for all we know, they didn't really do it, that they had the ability to project into people's minds to make them think they did it too.
That too, man. It's all possible. That's what's beautiful about this.
That would be
It
just
is-
as effective, though. You know, if they could make, if you're down there in the missile silo and all of a sudden everything goes crazy, and they could generate mass confusion and stop somebody from doing something, that could be almost as effective as disabling the physical equipment.
Yeah, and it goes back to my film Doors of Perception. Our perception is going to heavily influence how we perceive all of this phenomena, how we perceive our lives, how well our lives are going, if we're going to experience good or bad things. The way we're looking at things is going to be kind of the fuel for where it brings us. And that goes for paranormal experiences as well, UFOs and all of that.
Yeah.
Perception is everything. I mean, if you watch a car crash, 10 different people will have different perceptions. Who's at fault? What happened?
Yeah.
If it's worse, I mean, if let's say Trump says something, you'll have two completely versions of reality. You know what I mean? Or any event you see on the
Yep.
news. It's like it's always been interactive because we have biases and we have consciousness that are subjective. So with these big ticket metaphysical things, it's just going to be more intense. Just
It's
the way it
true.
is.
Yeah.
At the same time, Chris, you in Doors of Perception, of course, you have a section on our favorite Skinwalker Ranch, and I agree. My wife is like, I hate that term. I hate it too. It sounds more like I don't know, chainsaw massacre. You know, I mean,
People
similar.
scalping
Silence of the
people.
Lambs. Yeah, but it's not. It's not. It's Skinwalkers. But
Yeah.
you said you were there or near there, and you were with Ryan Burns, the fly
Mhm.
fishing guide, and he used a 360 UFO camera, and he saw an orange beam over a shack, very reminding me of Elvis's birth, except it was blue. He found a pelt, and tell us about that, because this was a pretty wild thing for you too.
Yeah, it was. And they had some experiences that we didn't include in Doors of Perception, but we're going to be putting in the sequel, Doors of Perception 2, because we had so much that went into the film, so much filming and content, we couldn't include it all in one film. So we're going to have a sequel to this. But as far as the experiences I had while I was there, UFOs galore. As soon as nighttime hit, you just see these lights shooting across the sky. They had these manifesting what Ryan called portals over the mesa, these white, very bright lights that would just manifest out of nowhere and then close off. And sometimes when they'd come back on, you'd see these little white orbs shoot out of them, which was pretty incredible. I couldn't explain any of the stuff that I saw. A lot of satellites, a lot of planes, but a lot of things that I really couldn't explain. The creepiest part was Ryan had night vision goggles, and everywhere where we looked, our whole area, there were teams of military black ops surveying us and watching us and shooting purple lasers at us and having all kinds of exotic equipment. He said, this is what happens on a daily basis. He said, it doesn't matter who is out there. These black ops guys are always surveying the area. And I found out after from a few other guests that I had, and Ryan as well, that Skinwalker Ranch, that whole area, is basically an extremely exotic weapons testing site.
Hmm.
They use the paranormal stuff for plausible deniability because it does happen out there, but they can create a lot of this stuff. They have UFOs, they have frequency technology where they can make you hallucinate, see things, be sick. They can give you diseases, all kinds of stuff. They have nanotechnology. He claims they have nanotechnology that can form and manifest into animals and into other shapes. Things like really crazy things that he claims the military is doing out there. But there's also the natural, paranormal, I guess you could say, phenomena that occurs out there. The Skinwalker lore, where, of course, if you aren't aware, the members of the Ute tribe and other tribes, really all across the Americas, had this practice of where it was a ritual to project themselves as an animal. They would use the pelt of an animal and other dark ritualistic practices, which I understand may include human sacrifice, very dark things. They use the pelt of this animal and they project themselves as that coyote or whatever pelt they're wearing. And gets pretty confusing as to the physicality of the projection, because at times people claim to have been harmed by some of these skinwalkers. Some of these manifestations can be physical, I understand, and even though they are just projections, they can be dangerous. But that is, the main crux of the skinwalker lore. But when we went there, this whole time it was just kind of a weird energy there. It was not kind of similar to what we were talking about in New Orleans, but it was more of an agitation and like immediate danger kind of feeling. I felt like there was something always, around the corner, and it was probably the black ops team surrounding us. But the days to follow, when we left, my wife and I just noticed that we had anxiety. We didn't feel right. We got home, we were fighting and angry at each other, and we never do this. And Ryan calls me the next day and he's like, "Hey, I found a pelt of an animal in the trailer you guys stayed in after you left on top of the fridge." He's like, "It's not mine, and I know what they use this for." And I was like, "What? That's pretty crazy." And I also found a rock in one of my bags that I thought I had gotten rid of, but it ended up in my bag. Because Ryan told me specifically, don't bring any rocks home. I had it sitting on the table. He pointed to it. Don't bring that home. Things will happen. I was like, all right, I won't bring it home. But I get home and I open my bag. It's in there. So we did a little, ritual, said a prayer, got rid of the rock. And thankfully, all that negative juju was gone. So I couldn't tell you if there was something connected to it, if it was all just in our heads or what. But when we got the rock, we got the negative energy out of there.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, fascinating story and fascinating seeing. Yeah, the Skinwalker thing is just all the documentary, you hit all the right notes for sure. I mean, I think
Thank you.
so much really affected me. Go ahead.
I could tell you one more great Skinwalker story.
Sure.
I didn't include in the first one, but Ryan told me about his security guy was out one night patrolling the area, and he sees 3 dudes by one of his trailer units rummaging through trash, and the security guy's armed. He pulls his firearm on him and tells him to freeze. When he yells freeze, they all jump into a canine sitting stance at the same time and look at him all at the same time with eye shine like dogs. And they're just sitting there like canines looking at him. They were humanoid, where they were human looking. And after a few seconds, they all in sync started lunging at him on all fours, and he unloaded on them. And he claims to have hit them all multiple times. And it took many shots for them to start to get deterred and run away. And then eventually they started running away on all fours, but they were leaping fences that he said were much impossible for normal humans to just leap over like a canine dog.
Wow.
And the next day there was a police report of 3 dead Ute tribes members of gunshot wounds found in different locations.
My God.
Yeah.
Does that imply that they were the canine acting,
They were acting
guys?
like a canine, that's for sure.
And that the guard actually shot them and they
Well,
leaped
he
away?
did. He claims he shot them, and he was following the news reports the next day of the 3 dead gentlemen in different locations found from the U tribe. And apparently, it's unfortunate that they don't do much investigation for some of these tribal crimes and things like that.
Yeah.
Because
they could have traced the
that's
bullets back to the guard's gun,
Mhm. And he would have still been completely in the clear. He was doing his job, basically defending his life, but still a crazy story.
Yeah. Well, there's another reason to be creeped out in the Skinwalker Ranch area, which is the cattle mutilations, right? There have been mutilations in that area.
In fact, Ryan had some neurological damage after coming into close proximity to a cattle mutilation and kind of messing with it a little bit for a few weeks after. He had severe neurological damage. He had to do some therapy and some things to get back to normal, but he was really messed up just from going into close proximity to one of those things. Could have been like radiation, or I don't know. It's dangerous out there. They've got people getting cancer left and right, strange diseases, strange illnesses, but apparently it has something to do with the military weapons testing too.
Anybody ever take a Geiger counter out there to see if there's sources of radiation?
Yeah, he had a Geiger counter while we were out there. It was spiking in quite a few locations. It was pretty unnerving how much radiation is just surrounding that whole area.
Yep.
Pretty wild. Yeah. So many good stories. I mean, the one that affected me was the one with what's the name of the lady? Karen Wilkinson, who kept getting pregnant, and these things were basically devouring her child. If anybody watches the Netflix series of Midnight Mass, there's a story like that, except she's pregnant and she gets bitten by a vampire, so her body feeds off of her fetus. And so it reminded me, it's pretty intense. But that poor lady kept getting pregnant, and these demons kept devouring that, her offspring before, and she'd go to the doctor and you're not pregnant.
Must have been frustrating. And then the thing didn't like her when they showed it to her, when the aliens or whoever they were showed it to her. It didn't like her. It was kind of bleh.
The craziest part about that is this isn't the first time I've heard this story. I've had abductees on since I've started doing this show, and I've heard accounts, plenty different people that claim to have these horrific gray extraterrestrial beings do experiments on them, take sperm, eggs, and then abduct them again at a later time and present them with what they claim to be as their hybrid children, and try and get them to, hold them and comfort them, and sometimes breastfeed them at times. And then they take them away and they'll be like, all right, that's all we need you to do. And they send them back on their way, which I couldn't tell you what's really happening here. This is a terrifying possibility. It seems like it's a complete infringement on people's free will to abduct them and do experiments and force them to have children. This is, not anything that I think that we signed up for as humans. It seems like a very, it seems like an infringement on everything we are. And the fact that in her story, like I said earlier, there's military involvement. The human element in all this stuff terrifies me more than extraterrestrials, Bigfoot, ghosts, and all of that combined. When we bring our military in and some of the things that they're involved with, that is what I'm more concerned with than anything. And it seems like with a lot of these people that I interviewed, they have the same thing. They'll be like, yeah, there was a military guy that was taking notes, or a doctor that was taking notes or doing experiments while these insectoid beings were impregnating me, or something like that. Just these wild stories.
Something else. Yeah, there's so much good stuff. Well, as we get to the end, you talked about so you're doing a sequel to Doors of Perception. How's that going?
Yes, it is going good. We just started filming for it. I just did my first couple of interviews. We're going to be traveling probably back to Ryan's Space Wolf research near Skinwalker Ranch just to get a little bit more from that. And we're going to try and go to North and South Carolina. We have a few friends that we're going visit, but we're going to do some interviews and filming out there. And we're hoping to have the second film wrapped up in about 8 months or so. And then we'll start the submission process again. But this one is going to focus on some of the same concepts, but we're going to go a little deeper into the psychedelic aspect. Right now in Colorado, there's a growing psychedelic industry. I'd like to explore a little bit about what's happening with that, as well as the dark side of psychedelic use and some of the weaponization over the years, like MK Ultra, some of the MK Ultra experimentation with psychedelics, the dangers of misusing it, and some of the spiritual dangers. And we'll go deeper into the possibilities of David Icke's perspective that we are in possibly some kind of archonic loose form, and we'll get the dark side of that and the more positive understanding of that possibility as well. So we're just going to go really deep into further into some of these concepts.
Awesome. Can't wait for it to be out and for us to chat about it, because again, I really enjoyed the last two. Well, yeah, better wrap it up. Vance, do you have any last question or comment? Are we all good?
Oh, we're good. But on Skywalker Ranch, well, what do you think? You're probably familiar with George Knapp, right? Because he was one of the pioneers. Did you guys have any electrical manifestations while you were out there? Because he reported security cameras going down and sparks from the poles.
We had 2 cell phones just go completely dead that were fully charged, but that's it. Nothing really like, super profound. But yeah, we did experience the zappage of power.
Whoa.
Very cool. Very cool. And where can people find these documentaries? I saw the Occult Louisiana on Tubi, so that's an easy one.
You can see Occult Louisiana on Tubi. Doors of Perception just dropped on Amazon Prime. You can rent or buy it right now. A couple of bucks, you can rent it. We're expecting it to also be on Tubi and some of the other free streaming platforms within a few months. So by midsummer, look for it on there. And it's a great way to help support us and help with production of the next film by going and watch those. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah, highly recommend it. That's for sure. Yes, well, we are at the end. Yes, I hope everybody's enjoyed the show. I know it's a holiday weekend here in the United States, so hopefully if you're out there in nature, you don't run into a rougarou or a giant lizard in pajamas,
negligee.
yeah, in a negligee or Bigfoot, but at least you'll be ready somewhat. So.
Yeah, get those colanders out there. Make sure they have more than 12 holes.
There you go. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. You guys will be fine. So, yeah, great show. But first, I guess I'll say, and I have Chris's link for his website in the show notes. So check out his work, his podcast, a lot of stuff going at the Forbidden Knowledge Network. A lot of resources if you need to get ready when you're out there looking out there in the woods this weekend or beyond that and what to do.
That's it.
You can never be prepared enough. So, but Vance, thanks for keeping us company. And I hope you got your crown, or I can't.
No, I've lost my crown. Oh, no, wait a minute. Last time I checked, I was only number 2.
Oh, so, okay. Yeah.
Maybe I'll do better next time. Now I got to go see what my little rougarou is doing, running around the house.
Yeah, I think my rougarou needs to go out to the yard because she's like howling at me. But so it is. But yeah, Chris, enjoyed our first time or switching this around, and look forward to the next time we could chat.
Yes, sir. Thank you again for having me. Had a great time.
Great time too. And for everybody else,
Yeah.
thanks for being here. And I hope you enjoyed yourself. Next week, we've got David Block. He's going to, our redo, he's going to talk about AI and some other good stuff, show on sacred geometry. And yes, we will continue putting out the truth. The truth is out there. But at the end of the day, it's all about self-knowledge and understanding what your mission is in this world. And it's a good mission. Other than that, take care, everybody, and have a good weekend.